Welcome to episode 54 of Rubbish Talk with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
And the first one, well, not the second one of 2025, but the first one we've actually recorded in 2025. We cheated a little bit for episode 53, didn't we? We did it in December. So thank you for an episode with John Crawford. So this week we have Gordon Fergus, and Gordon is the Treatment Development Director for Veolia Waste Management. So more about Gordon later on. But first of all, Jane, I think you want to talk about drink.
Drink? Well, I did actually, because I've been looking about tea bags. Now, I love me tea. I don't like coffee. I hate coffee. That's one of the worst things ever. So important thing about tea. And my tea bags, they tend to go in the compost bin because I think that's where they should go. But there's been something here on tea bags and why you shouldn't and how you shouldn't put them in, because they've got plastic in it. And this is from the Ideal Home magazine, why you shouldn't put tea bags in your compost bin, according to gardening experts. Now, I looked at this and I was kind of feeling guilty, because it says here that many commercially available tea bags are made from synthetic materials like nylon or polypropylene, which don't break down, blah, 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 blah. I think of synthetic materials. So I thought, well, I'll just have a quick Google. So I found this, which says, can you compost your tea bags? And who's it from?
The answer is some you can and some you can't.
Well, I've got a list here, and it says, are Yorkshire tea bags compostable? Yes, because I use Yorkshire tea. Or compostable, they're made from plant-based materials. Tetley tea bags. Some Tetley tea bags are compostable, while others aren't. Tetley has started to transition to plant-based tea bags, but not all products. So I was quite, I was thinking, well, Yorkshire and Tetley are my two main ones. I'm not a fancy tea bag person. Yorkshire or Tetley's, I'm fine. So
sure.
I just have to check. Now I'm going to go back and check my Yorkshire tea bags, because they should be compostable, and then I'll feel okay about it. So there you go.
You would think in this day and age they would all be compostable. And
yeah,
we wouldn't have to say to the public, you need to check the tiny print that I can't read anymore on a packet to decide if it's, and that packet there is compostable, but that packet's not. And it's all a bit of a nonsense, isn't it?
It is a bit of a nonsense. And you just think, well,
yeah.
It's got tea in it. And one thing it says, oh yes, if you rip it open and put the tea in, then that's fine. I'm like, I'm going to sit there and rip open my tea bag after I've taken it out.
Of course you should. No commitment there, Jane.
Taking out my cup of tea. Got more important things to do, like drink maybe.
That's why you're better with coffee.
Oh, no.
I got loads of criticism at Christmas dinner.
Why?
I had read someplace or listened to something about people that use coffee grinds from making real coffee, and they use that in their baking.
In their baking?
So in their cakes and so on, they use the grounds of coffee. And I'm absolutely convinced I wasn't dreaming about this. I might have been dreaming about it, but I'm absolutely convinced I wasn't dreaming about it.
Okay.
So I started telling people this, and they thought I was taking a piss, basically. So I got ribbed all day about my coffee grounds and baking. So whoever is out there, whoever told me that they use their coffee grounds in baking, please reach out and give me the information so I can share it with family members and get myself sorted out. But your answer to your tea bags, Jane, is drink instant coffee and then you don't have any waste. There you go.
No, I'll just stick to my tea, actually. Do you know, talking about Christmas, right? I was thinking that I'd got some Christmas crackers and we were pulling them at Christmas, and I thought, this is the biggest waste of money I have spent. I mean, they were very nice crackers, and they did pop, but, looking inside, you wear your hat for like 5 minutes and then it falls off. And you think, really? I did think at that time that actually this is totally the most unsustainable thing I've bought over Christmas.
I did have to have a few deep breaths at Christmas about sustainability and the crap that gets bought and the lack of any sort of semblance of any sort of recycling structure at people's houses, and I'm like, life is too short to raise an issue at that particular time.
Yes. Well, I've
But it
certainly
does.
got a full bin of cans and wine bottles, given everybody was at home.
Anyway, more exciting, much
Sorry,
more
sorry.
exciting news. We're going to talk about black soldier fly farming.
Yeah.
So that sounds
Okay.
really exciting. So my group, who are based in Yorkshire, are planning to open a black soldier fly farm where they will feed the flies or feed the larvae, and they will consume the waste, and they'll produce a thing called frass, which is just basically an organic fertilizer. But then I take it the larvae get used as a feed source and go into like fish food and so on. So
Yeah, it just seems
exciting
like
stuff.
yeah.
I can just
Imagine a
imagine all the
fish
flies
farm.
escaping though. Eh?
Oh, me too. It sounds horrible.
I take it they keep them in because the food's there, so they stay with the food. So as long as they're getting fed, they'll stay.
Okay,
But
fair enough.
I wouldn't like to see them
No,
escape.
that's definitely one of those NIMBY ones, isn't it? It's like,
I wonder how
come
that
across
plant.
a blood. I think I'd rather have a waste incinerator rather than a fly plant next to my house.
Yeah, I wonder how they do the planning application for that one.
Interesting.
Good luck.
Yeah, well, another fire at a site.
First of 2025.
Yeah, this was in down in Walsall in Aldridge, a Biffa waste management recycling plant. And what's interesting, well, not really, totally interesting, but I was actually down south when I heard that on the radio, and I just went, oh no, not another fire at a waste facility. It's just 10 crews attended the fire apparently.
But according to that news item, Jane, they attended on the 4th of January 2024.
Well, that's clever.
So the news reporter was obviously not working in the same year.
No, obviously not.
He never changed his 24 to 25. So.
Oh, well, we all make mistakes, don't we? And I'm sure putting 24 instead of 25 for at least the first week's okay.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Just say that there's a video footage as well.
There was. As with all things, we'll put some links up in the newsletter. The next one we've got is one from Highland Council. Highland Council called off plans for a new incinerator. So this has been, for Highland Council, this is going to be kicking around for 20 odd years. They've, they sort of identified a strategic need for a waste facility in basically Inverness, the main population centre, and they've obviously kicked into touch again. But friends of the Air Scotland are praising the decision, and you think, well, really? The material's now trundling down the road all the way to Dunbar, hundreds and hundreds of vehicles going all the way down to Dunbar to be burnt. So there's a bit of NIMBY stuff going on here, I think, in terms of Highland Council, that they produce the waste up there. Maybe they should deal with the waste up there, rather than shipping it elsewhere.
Down the A9.
If you look at the map of Scotland in terms of where incineration capacity or even waste disposal capacity is, it's just dreadful. It's Aberdeen, Dundee, Central Belt, and that's it. So if you generate waste in Skye or Highlands, you've not got many options for getting it handled.
I think if we listen to Colin Clark in the episode we had a while back, we were talking about Highland Council. When I first started working on Highland Council, which was late 1990s, we were talking about wanting, small incineration plants or energy from waste facilities then. And it's like nothing goes quickly, does it? And now eventually they decided they don't want it anyway. So yeah, that's it. It's just a case of, that's fine, but what's the alternative? And there isn't one up there at the moment.
There you go. So saving you here, Jane. Episode 31, Colin Clark.
Episode 31 with Colin.
That's a long time. That's almost a a year ago, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Time flies. Time flies.
Yes. And did you get any Lego for Christmas, Alistair, or
Did I what?
get any Lego for Christmas?
Did I get any Lego? Oh, no, but they're still finding it from this cargo ship. This
Yes.
cargo ship that sunk 27 years ago on the south coast someplace, into near Land's End.
Yeah.
So it sunk, but now what they're all excited about is they found the first ever shark. They've obviously not found a shark from it before, so...
And what did it say? It was nearly 5 million pieces of Lego, which was swept off a shipping container in 1997, and they're still finding bits of Lego now. It's quite fascinating, that, isn't it?
And it still looks intact.
They do seem to just found them, those Southwest England, Channel Islands, Wales and Ireland. Oh, it's as far away as the Netherlands and Norway. Crikey, that's quite a tortuous reef.
I think somebody's done a bit of a study in it in terms of just the flows of material, where it's gone to and where it's ended up. It's actually provided quite good sort of information in terms of how the currents work and stuff. I'm sure I've read someplace about that.
Yeah. Apparently there was 22,200 dark grey Lego sharks. We've only found one so far.
Dear, a rare collector's item.
I know, absolutely. Yeah. I just think it's quite fascinating where they all end up, isn't it? And the fact that people actually do find them, which is good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I think that's news. That's the news this year. We talked last episode about the limbs in the Loch murder, and I did actually recommend it to a family friend. And about 2 days later, he messaged me and said, "That was pretty grim, wasn't it?" So if you've not watched it, it's a pretty grim series, I'll tell you. So what we've got for Rubbish Talk, third year of Rubbish Talk. So for new listeners, what are we about? We're trying to share news about the waste sector. We're trying to share really how complex it is, and it's not quite as simple as people think. So our friend Kimberly Pratt from the Circular Economy Campaign, our Friends of the Earth, who's always saying it's easy, it's not the public's fault. Well, maybe it is. Sometimes it is a bit the public's fault. The public need to step up and do their bit. But yes, totally agree with some of her points that the system, the infrastructure needs help, needs support, needs improved. But, what we're trying to do is share some of the issues that are out there, try and build up a bit of an engagement with it. So,
yeah, well, that's the idea, isn't it? And hopefully people will listen and know what it's a bit more about and listen to our rants. Or your rant, sorry,
and share and comment. Oh, I've got you've started me.
No, what's your rant this time?
Oh, well, Christmas walks along the seafront at Ayr.
Oh no, not more benches with flowers on.
Benches with wreaths.
Oh no.
So for the people that have not heard this rant before, I have this view that if you have a loved one that dies and you donate a bench in a public space, that bench is provided for the public to sit on. It's not provided as a memorial for your family. And we seem to have this thing where people view that as their own bench, and they put wreaths on and they put flowers, and then 2 months later the wreaths are still there and their flowers are all dead and people can't sit at the benches. So
yeah, and somebody else have to pick up the flowers and put them in the bin.
Yeah, but the last time I had that rant, people said I'm being really mean and miserable, but I'm not totally convinced I am being mean and miserable about it. I think I quite like seeing the benches. I quite like seeing the people's name tags and all the rest in it. But I'm not keen on the flowers and the wreaths and all the various bits and pieces.
Yeah.
What's your view, Jane? You've never given me your view.
Well, those benches are for sitting on, really, aren't they? They're not. You don't have to sit down and try and sit in a holly wreath and some sort of flowers as well. And it wouldn't be so bad if they were only there for a short period of time, but it's there for, until somebody throws them in the bin. It's not like people come back and throw them away, does it?
I think some you see, they're very much definitely, there's flowers there and they're kept fresh or whatever they're done, and and they're kept quite subtle and all the rest. That I can sort of live with that. It's the ones that are there, and then 2 months later they'll still be there.
Some of them have little flower thingy-mabobs on the back of them, don't they, where you can shove your flowers in a container. So perhaps that's, I don't know.
But I was actually, this is how sad I am actually, I was about to take a photograph in the gents' toilet in the gym 2 days ago.
Okay. Any particular reason?
So imagine this, there's 2 urinals. One of them, somebody's decided to throw a bit of chewing gum in. One of them's decided to throw, the other one's got a bundle of paper tissue. And there's a bin 2 feet away. And I'm thinking, how can you not just put that in the bin where it's meant to go? Rather than put in a urinal where some poor member of staff's going to have to put gloves on, take it out there and put it in the bin anyway.
Yeah, it's not very pleasant.
It's just, I managed not to take the photograph, but I'm struggling. I'm struggling not to have the rant about it. But anyway, to be honest, that sums up public attitude about litter and waste. It's just, it's not all public, but a big percentage of the public don't seem to care, don't seem to have any sort of view of trying to manage it responsibilities. Yeah,
I went for a walk, and the amount of stuff that was related to vapes that have been thrown on the floor. You think, why? It's it's a public access, public walk onto a sort of recreation ground, and why can't you just put it in the bin? There are bins available.
I've got a new theory about vapes. I think what the government should be doing is saying to councils and waste companies, you collect up the vapes and you tell us how many of each manufacturers you've got, and we will charge the manufacturers for every single vape you've got. So £2. So every vape that's in the wrong place, as in it's littered in the street or it ends up in a waste system, £2 per vape, and we charge it back to the suppliers.
Yeah.
And if you did that, you would soon see no vapes in the recycling sites.
Yeah, you'd be a bit worried about where they went now.
There you go. Anyway, rubbish talk, Strava. How's your cycling and running, Jane?
Well, it's quite cold and dark. And it's been raining quite a lot.
It has. I'd admit it's been raining quite a lot. But any listeners interested, got a new regime. We started off in, I think it was November, with our Rubbish Talk Strava Club. And it started off 10 minutes of activity for 10 days in the month. We've been ramping up. So this month, so you're not getting off lightly this month, it's at least 20 minutes for at least 20 days. So if you want to find that, just go into your Strava and Google or search for Rubbish Talk and you'll see it. And you'll be delighted to know who won the December challenge, Jane.
I don't need to guess. I'm sure it was yourself, Alistair.
My brother was second, and I'm delighted that I managed to beat him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that was mainly because I did a big race at the end of December, actually. So, just if anybody's interested, on the newsletter, I always do a top 10 adventures, which is basically runs and races I do. So if anybody's remotely interested, we'll put that link on the website, on the news item, and you can have a look. But one of the interesting ones, there's a guy called Finlay Wild, who's a really, really experienced tail runner based in Inverness. And I reached out to him about a couple of things, and I mentioned this podcast, and he actually came back with quite a big list of questions about waste and what happens and so on. So I have replied to him. So I'll maybe have to get him on and get him on to ask us some questions. So we'll see.
That would be quite good, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'll be like, Alistair, you answer that one.
And saying that, he's no replied back to me, so he's maybe thinking, forget about that.
Okay, so any questions or ideas for topics, anything you want to hear about, then we've got our email address, hello@rubbishtalk.co.uk. So we all want to hear from people, and because I think we've got some new listeners in 2025, haven't we, Alistair?
Yep, lots of new listeners and lots of we've got lots of guests planned, actually. We've got a bit of I'm not saying too many guests, but we've got a good pipeline of guests coming on, some really interesting people coming on. So lots of new stuff for 2025. And apart from that, we had a good chat with Gordon Fergus. Now, Gordon Fergus worked for me a long, long time ago at Bar Environmental, and I'm not sure how much he enjoyed that experience. He was very much at the sharp end when he was at Bar with me, but he is now the Treatment Development Director at Veolia, and we had a really good chat about what Veolia is doing, simpler recycling, all that type of stuff. So over to myself, Jane, and Gordon Fergus.
Hi, Gordon. Welcome to Rubbish Talk and Happy New Year. I think we're saying that we can say Happy New Year until March. So, Happy New Year and Happy New Year to all our listeners. So we're going to go through all these questions with you. And we want to hear about you, what you've been doing and all that kind of thing. So my first question is about who you currently work for, and a bit of background about the organisation, what they do and that kind of thing. So if you can, it is like a bit like an interview question, but if you can start with that, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much for having me on. So I work for Veolia, and Veolia are a large multinational organisation. We're spread across three sectors: waste, water and energy. And really the whole point for Veolia now is about ecological transformation, and that's how we can help our customers to manage their impact on the climate, decrease pollution and manage resources more effectively. Now, across the world, Veolia has 218,000 employees. And actually in the UK, we're the largest in the UK in the resource sector, with 14,000 employees and a turnover of 2.8 billion euros. So a huge organisation, but with that, it's got some really fascinating people and some experience in some real niche sectors. Like recently we started a contract to decommission a nuclear submarine at Rosyth, and you come across people who are just so competent and so have so much knowledge in niche areas that's just quite eye-opening. So yeah, it's a great organisation.
That's definitely a niche area to decommission nuclear submarines. Crikey, that's quite a challenge.
And there's lots of different services like that Veolia do. So we do lots of sort of core services like managing waste and energy from waste facilities and collecting people's waste and recycling. But there's also a lot in hazardous waste and water and energy as well across quite a lot of different sectors. So it's a really interesting organisation to be a part of.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Certainly hadn't realised. I mean, I knew it was a big organisation, but in terms of those three sectors and the amount of staff you were saying worldwide, that's quite a big organisation to manage and keep hold of, isn't it? So in terms of your sort of side, are you working on the waste side? What's your sort of role in that?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm Treatment Development Director. I look after the public sector development for Veolia in waste. So that looks at the local authority customers, and that varies from bidding for contracts, contract variations, and then also looking at our strategy. So where do we need to develop new facilities? What sort of technology is going to be required in the future, and working with our technical experts to hopefully offer a solution to our customers that's suitable for them.
Keeps you busy.
But yeah, it's fascinating. At the moment, there's always this constant change, and with simpler recycling, then we've got even more change coming. We've got a lot of contracts that are PFI type contracts that have got MRFs have got recycling facilities that will need to change to be able to cope with the new mix of materials that will be presented. So it's really good.
So that's interesting. So in terms of that, the new mix of materials, so how is that going to work? Because we've heard a lot about the simpler recycling projects and what's happening and what's going to happen, and you're only going to have a half a bin or whatever. You can have one bin for everything, but how does it impact on your business?
So the majority of the operations for Veolia are in England, so the devolved nations might have different schemes. So we're looking at things about films and flexibles, plastics being introduced. For us, that's probably the bigger challenge, because if we have a recycling facility that also handles paper, then it can be very difficult to mechanically sort those two from each other. And then the other part is what you actually do with those films and flexibles when you remove them. At the moment, we don't have a viable outlet for those material. There's a lot of expectation that chemical recycling of plastics will be developed, but that's very much in its infancy, and we need that technology to progress. And for our customers, there's so much uncertainty, because only recently they're finding out how some of that new material might be funded, and we now need to work with our customers to understand how that funding works, what that will actually mean for those facilities that we operate on their behalf.
That's interesting. That's it's quite a change from your side of it. So the recent thing is saying that paper and card are going to be kept separate from everything else. Is that correct?
And that's Veolia's preference. Our preference is a twin stream collection where you have paper and card, the fibre mix separate, and then you have the other materials that will go to a MRF for processing. So that's definitely our preference, to preserve the quality of that fibre material.
Yeah, well, no, totally. So in terms of the film, so in terms of the rest, you've got plastic, film, cans. You've got quite a mixture going in there. Are you expecting quite a big, contamination to be quite high, or what's your thought on that one?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think the contamination will be a significant issue. And what we'll also see is not just contamination of things like food still within packaging and the sort of normal contamination, but also contamination of the raw material presented. So we see in the past where you may have had a fully commingled collection, and then in the future you move to paper and card being separate. Actually, the education of the public and the engagement is so important, because that paper is now a contaminant if it appears in that mixed plastic can material.
Yeah, so this is where does your pizza box go, which has got your bit of pizza at the bottom, or your tomato sauce? Does it go in the general waste? Does it go in your cardboard? There's always that dilemma, isn't there?
Yeah, the pizza box is the one that comes up all the time, and your pizza boxes are recyclable. Just remove that slice of pizza, but the contamination is fine.
Just eat it, Gordon. Just eat the pizza.
That's exactly. I champion food waste in that manner.
Yes, well, me too, especially over Christmas, which you definitely need to sort of reduce my food intake.
So going back a step, Gordon, I know this story, but I know how you started in the industry. What brought you into the world of waste management, and did you intend to end up there?
I think probably like most people, it wasn't really that intentional. It's not something as a small child that is you dream of. But I think what happened was I was always interested in nature and the environment, and even when I look back at the projects I did at school were on that theme. So I went to what was Scottish Agricultural College at Auchenfreuth, and I studied environmental protection and management. And as one of our field trips, we went to Greengair's landfill site,
lovely,
which was the mecca of waste management in Scotland at the time. It was a fascinating visit. It was a real eye-opener, and I think for me, it was the scale of the site. It was seeing, compactors driving over. It was either a fridge or a washing machine at the time, because there wasn't the same control for watching that, but then also seeing the technology with the leachate treatment plant and the early landfill gas systems, and then also the skilled and knowledgeable people. That was probably the start of actually this is quite interesting and a lot more than I'd ever considered. And then when I was coming towards the end of my course, I'd seen an advert for a role with Bar Environmental. I think of it now and again sometimes as like a trainee manager role, but I think it was more of a dog's body role, and it was fantastic. So we looked at operating the weighbridge, environmental monitoring, cell construction, installation of the leachate treatment plant. There was just so much going on, and it was a real baptism of fire to move out of, to move into a work environment from a comfortable student life. So it's fantastic.
It was all good, Gordon, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It's character building.
Yeah, I kind of remember the old landfill sites, and you'd walk around and you'd be like tripping over the leachate. Those are fond memories.
There's obviously been a bit of time pass since Garlath landfill site back in, when would that be? The late 1990s, I would think.
Yes,
Would that be
yeah,
right?
That's right. Late
So
90s.
what have you done since then? What have you been involved with since then?
Since then, I moved to England. I worked doing environmental monitoring of landfill sites. Moved into some training of operations. Then I had a small period in quarrying industry and concrete, and then back into waste for at the time for FCC, working as landfill manager, and then moved into commercial roles within FCC, including running the bid team as well. And then since that, I've moved on to Veolia, doing the similar within the public sector. But I've really enjoyed the operational aspects of it, and I do genuinely feel that some of it was that foundation at Garlath and Auchencarra, and meeting the people who are actually, working hard on site, and then be able to go and move on to England to see what is a much larger industry because of the scale and the population. Then that means that there's a lot more development in different technologies that I was able to see that I probably wouldn't have had the same experience if I'd stayed in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because you've worked for quite a few different operators with BAR and FCC and Veolia, and I suppose you must have seen the change from the basic landfill site all the way up to all this new technology and moving from the landfill to recycling and recovery and all that kind of stuff. From going into a landfill, now you've got MRFs and all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's been really good because at the start of my career, with BAR, the landfill sites, landfill tax had just been introduced probably 6 months or so beforehand, and I remember at the time we were thinking, that landfill's always going to be needed, but also landfill was sort of been demonised, probably quite rightly, as we need to move away, and energy from waste at the time was seen as this is the good place we should move to. And now we can see that, the energy from waste plants are the new landfill that were at the start of my career. We now need to be moving away from that at pace. And there's some people looking at technology for carbon capture to mitigate the impact of energy from waste plants. But then it's also, we need to have this transition to a lot more readily recyclable material being put on the market in the first place with responsible packaging, and then the technology that is aligned to that to be able to recycle it properly.
Yeah, particularly the film like you were talking about earlier.
Well, that's right, it's the film and the flexibles, but it's also these multi-layered materials. The standard that was seen before is things like Pringle tubes, and Veolia have worked with the packaging design to make sure that they move to a new material that it is recyclable, that it is cardboard based. It's not a metal base and a cardboard with a metal or plastic liner and a plastic lid, to move away from those complex materials that are just not viable to recycle.
Do you think, Gordon, that I'm taking off topic slightly, that it's good that Veolia has done that, but do you think it should be the wider waste sector that's doing stuff like that rather than just specific companies? Because I think that's where I think the waste sector doesn't talk often enough with a common voice, that we're presented with waste by the rest of the sector, and we just have to go on and deal with it. And I think we're actually probably quite poor at pushing back at some of these things.
You're exactly right. I think some of it is the scale of the sector compared to the might of some of these organisations. And I think the other part is hopefully the extended producer responsibility. I say penalise, but I guess incentivises those packaging companies to use appropriate material by being a lower cost for them.
I was just talking to a council staff, and they've been notified what their extended producer responsibility, what money they'll be getting. And it turns out his neighbouring authority is getting roughly the same as him, and their authority is much smaller, and they've effectively been penalised because they've actually generated quite a lot of revenue for the recycling. So what he's actually saying is what's happening is it's not actually incentivising recycling, it's actually incentivising disposal. Because they get more money from the EPR if they dispose more waste.
I think some of it's the timings. We've seen some customers have been holding off on new recycling initiatives until there's this clarity.
Mm-hmm.
We're also in England going to be looking at the introduction of food waste collection. And so I know some authorities were looking at it early, that have then held off until they had some visibility.
I still want to know why it's taken English authorities so long to actually introduce food waste recycling.
Yeah.
It's awful, isn't it?
It just bamboozles me. It's just like it's the biggest hit, 30 or 40% of the waste stream will be food.
And I think as well, the anaerobic digestion market in England has built the capacity for that. So it's been running, having to source alternative feedstocks because that waste has not arisen that they'd hoped.
So apart from your role with Mia Bar, what's been your favourite role or project in your journey? And of course you're going to say bar.
Oh, yeah, of course. That was my formative year. I think what I've really enjoyed the tendering, moving on to that, because you see how complex procurements can be, trying to sort of decipher what the authority actually wants and is appropriate for Veolia to be able to deliver. So I've worked on quite a lot of projects like that, and some of I enjoy the smaller projects, but also on the larger complex projects, that's when it becomes a lot more challenging, because for a large organisation like Veolia, we might have 60 people involved from specialist areas such as insurance or technical or fleet or HR. So to coordinate such a large team, so there's been a project recently that I worked on that was for Birmingham City Council, that Veolia was the incumbent contractor, and a complex project to run an ageing energy from waste plant that was 25 to 30 years old, household waste sites, transfer stations. And I really enjoyed that because there's a fantastic operational team that Veolia have got on that contract. I've learned a huge amount from them, and I think part of what I've enjoyed is that continuing to learn and to be able to get immersed in an ageing energy from waste plant with people who really understand their technologies. I'm very fortunate to be around people like that. And so I think those sort of larger complex projects and seeing what Veolia has to offer across all the skills. Then also working with the local authority. Local authorities have got such a tough time financially. They've got such drivers on meeting net zero targets. And trying to bridge what is possible within that is enjoyable, a good challenge.
Yeah, that sounds like you've had quite a few good projects there, and you enjoy your work. You're happy in your work.
Yeah,
exactly. Has there been any disasters or worse things, or any funny stories you've got working in the waste industry? There must be.
Well, of course, there's probably the earliest one was again at Bar, and this was when so I was out doing environmental monitoring, and there was some dried sludge that I thought I need to get.
I remember this.
So some dried sludge that I had to get to a monitoring point the other side. So I thought I'll just walk across that, and that was fine until I got about halfway in, and then I sunk up to my knees, and I was stuck. And so I spent some time trying to sort of wiggle my feet and move to get out. Almost sort of pushing down in the gas analyzer and the dip meter to give me some punches. And then in the end, I had to sort of call for help on the radio. And then what happens actually is everyone very supportive comes over just to laugh at you and to mock you while you're stuck there. And then probably after about 20 minutes, the loading shovel eventually clears a little path towards me, and I was able to climb into the bucket of the loading shovel, but I had to leave my rigger boots behind And what turns out was a concrete or cementitious sludge. So they're probably still there, and someone will find some fossilised boots in the future.
I do actually remember. I remember the radio traffic from that day.
It was the ridicule that follows, and it's good.
Yes, I had something a little bit similar. I used to work in the northwest of England, and we did a lot of drilling and grouting projects for coal measure strata. And there was just the grout and the wet everywhere. You just didn't know what was a hole and what wasn't. The amount of times, you've left your wellies behind and walked on without the wellies. It's like, right, okay.
I do like that one. So do you think your opinions, habits have changed since you've been involved in waste? Going back to early days of bar, I remember that vividly. That was 95% of the waste produced was chucked in a landfill site. It has changed considerably. Do you think you've changed and evolved as you've gone through the industry?
Oh yeah. You can't help but get involved and understand what's going on, what you can do to increase your recycling or to reduce your waste to begin with. So even from basic things like we don't have a food waste collection. I'm in Leicestershire, but for the last 10 years. We've had a green cone in our garden so that we can separate food waste ourselves. And it is amazing how light your residual waste then is when that food waste comes out, and how little is actually in there when you do use the rest of your recycling properly. And I think it's also the basic things that, so we get our milk delivered in glass bottles with a little foil top, collecting them up in a ball until they're about a fist size amount before you put it in the recycling. So I've got my kids doing that. We'll get a little jar and make sure everyone does that. And the yogurt pot lids, they lick them and then they go in into the foil to be made into a ball. Idea. So there's little bits like that you just pick up from talking to people in the industry. To no, because I didn't appreciate that foil that small as a sort of milk bottle lid won't be separated.
Aye, it's just too small. How do you think we get engaging the public better with this message? There was over the Christmas holiday there was a BBC report about how bad incineration was, and there was an increase and all this sort of stuff. And I put up a post on LinkedIn basically saying, well, the public need to get a bit better at recycling and stop pretending we're doing it right. We're they're almost paying lip service to it and saying it's too hard, too difficult. And you can see that when you look at the waste comp data of how much recycle is still in residual waste. So how do we get better at getting the public engaged? Or, and my view is I don't think we have engaged the public. We've talked ourselves about it, but we don't engage the public.
I think there's been some really good campaigns early on that RAP did, or the sort of Recycle Now campaign. It's seen after sort of comprehensive spend and review, local authorities continually cutting any waste education teams and budget. And I think that's really where we've had that short-term financial saving that the local authorities have had to do. But I think we're paying for that because we've not got that culture change. If you look at some of the campaigns to stop lithium batteries with the Hypnocat and things, you can see there's a bit more energy about those sort of programs. That needs to be replicated into a more consistent message for the public. And that also, obviously, schools as well, and proper education programs across the UK.
Yeah. That makes sense. So all that work, what do you do for work and play, or relaxing and play?
So I've obviously got 2 kids. My kids are now just turned 17 and just turned 15, so it's the standard parental thing of driving them everywhere to rugby, or to my daughter now works part-time. So spending time with them. I also enjoy travelling and enjoy cooking. I really enjoy barbecue food. But this isn't barbecue like some little hamburgers or anything like that. It's the American type barbecue that you cook things for 12 hours or 14 hours and things like that. So I really enjoy that as well.
You've got to do. Are you allowed to tell us about your adventure in India?
That's fantastic. So I've done it twice in India and once in Sri Lanka. Where so India's on a rickshaw, so a motorised rickshaw, driving it myself with my friends and travelling from the bottom, Cochin, up to the north, to the Pakistan border. And then I've done the same up to the Himalayas, actually into the mountains.
So how far would that be? How many miles?
I think it's about 3,000 kilometres, I think it is. It's about
on a rickshaw?
Yeah, what an experience. You're so immersed into the country. And you cannot help but looking at the waste infrastructure or lack of it. And you look at the amount of disposable plastics, because generally people without money cannot go and buy a large shampoo or washing up liquid bottle. They buy a little sachets to go day to day, and you just see these little sachet plastics littered everywhere, and water bottles littered everywhere. It's just phenomenal. So you can't help look at the waste infrastructure when you're visiting these countries.
So what was your scariest in any of these trips? Did you have a scary time or a breakdown time or anything?
We've quite a few breakdowns, but one of them that luckily my friend Steve was really good at mechanics. We were going through a sort of safari area where there's warnings of tigers and all this sort of stuff, and the rickshaw broke down. And luckily it was about 10 minutes it took Steve to fix it, to get us out of there, and there was no animals there, but we were all very nervous. And I think my friends were quite confident because they felt that they weren't in danger because they only had to run faster than me, which they could. And they would leave me and they'd be gone. So they were quite comfortable with it.
So how long did it take you?
So each trip's about 2.5 weeks. Yeah, it's pretty intense. You're driving every day. You're driving yourself. You're unsupported. The roads are as chaotic as you can imagine. It's noisy and it's polluted and dusty. It's a real assault on the senses.
And do you just stay and eat where you find? Do you just?
Yeah. But it's actually so pretty much all of India has unbelievable mobile phone reception. So when you're travelling in the rickshaw during the day, you think, oh, we might be able to get 100 kilometres today. You actually go on your phone on booking.com and you can find a little hotel in these very small homestay type places are all embracing technology that you wouldn't believe. So no, it's fantastic. I think what interesting, if you ever watch the television programme, is it Race Across the World?
I love that programme.
Yeah. When they don't have a mobile phone, that's terrifying. Just because how much simpler it is to be able to travel the world when you've got access to the internet to be able to.
Because you were probably navigating with your phone as well, were you?
Yeah, exactly.
I used to say that when I used to go to Congo, you'd sit in the middle of the jungle. It'd take you, it was a hell of a place to get into, but they'd have a 4G phone signal better than we had in the west coast of Scotland.
Yeah,
because they just leapfrogged the whole, BT infrastructure we've got here, cables and wires, and just put up these microwave towers, and you had an amazing, 4G network. As long as you could afford to pay for it, you were fine.
Yeah, and I think some of the difficulty is for these countries, for the amount of waste they're producing, and if they followed our trajectory, then there's so much potential for much more pollution, and it's how we can get them to leapfrog waste technology to be able to not creating the mess and the impacts that we have made over the years as part of our development.
I've always said to young people, if they want to do something good in waste management, is to go to developing world and get engaged in waste management, because there's so many of these countries have literally no functioning waste management system.
It's a difficult one, for particularly the role I'm in, but if you had £1 to spend on recycling, actually spend it in India will be far more impactful than £1 in the UK.
Yeah.
So actually they should be incentivising investment.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, Gordon, but what about your current role? What are you trying to achieve in your current role, and what's next for you in your career? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time or whatever?
I think part of it is really about these changes for the local authority contracts over the next few years. So I think I'm going to be busy with that, and I enjoy that. I think what I've also started doing, this is my second year now, a trustee of an organisation called the Restart Project.
Okay.
I really enjoy that. So the Restart Project's about trying to change people's views on electrical items. So they campaign in UK and Europe for the right to repair and for legislation and process change, but then they also do a lot of grassroots things with repair cafes, restart parties in the UK, and being the umbrella organisation for a lot of that. And then their new thing is fixing factories. They're opening, I think it's another 3 in London, which is trying to showcase that there is opportunity to be repairing electrical items and not just discarding them. So I really enjoy that. So I hope to continue with that sort of charitable or reuse and repair type. I could find that interesting.
That is really interesting. You do find though, don't you, that sometimes you get somebody in to repair your washing machine or whatever, and it turns out you may as well buy a new one or something like that. And I think that's the issue, isn't it? Until you kind of balance that cost. I mean, it's always nice to do the right thing, but you need to do the right thing at the right price as well, I guess.
And that's the thing, a washing machine that you might consider getting someone to fix, whereas a hairdryer or a toaster, then you'll have a new one delivered to your door for £15 tomorrow from Amazon. So why spend any time trying to actually repair it? And some of it is about skills for people so that you can have a go at repairing it. So it's making sure that repair manuals are available, parts are available, people can have the ability to learn. And YouTube is a fantastic resource for people to watch a video on other people repairing things and having a go yourself.
Yeah. I think I'd be a bit scared to have a go at my...
And that's where Restart came in, is taken for people who are a bit scared, can go along to a Restart party, take their toaster or their kettle, and they can actually be shown by an expert on what can be done to repair it. And you can learn those skills and try and get the confidence yourself.
That's really good. I like that idea.
It is mad though, because you used to, one of the things I learned when I was young was how to rewire a plug to replace a plug. And that skill, because all the plugs are made molded now, that skill is just totally lost.
Yeah, and it's the basic thing. So I've tried to teach my children to change a plug. It's a painful process, but I wasn't pushing against an open door with them. But you're right. We've made technology a lot more complex and not repairable and disposable, and that's been intentional by the organisations who are manufacturing it. And that's part of what Restart trying to champion, is for that right to repair, then making things available, manuals on how you actually do it. But one of the other parts is the software obsolescence, where they're building in that they will only support software for 3 years, perhaps, and it's pushing that longer, so it's 5 or 7 years, at least, so that it does have a longer life.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
What we'll do, we'll share your not-for-profit. We'll share the details. You give us a link and we'll make sure we share the details so people would have a wee look at that. Any bits of, we always ask all our guests for a favourite bit of slang or dialect from the sector or from general life that you use. And I'm sure as a Scotsman south of the border, you'll be accused of talking Scots on occasion, are you?
Yeah, completely, all the time. And the one that jumped out immediately is cow. And I remember that because on the A77, there used to be the sign for Green Hag's Cow.
Yep.
And he's like, what on earth is Cowp? And Cowp is a household waste recycling centre, or it was also a transfer station, wasn't it? So I think Cowp was the one that I always thought I've not seen since. And I think it should be brought back.
I think that sign's probably still there on the old road. You're never down that road anymore. Yeah. So it's, but you do see the signs like Cowp closed or Cowp. This is pretty common, certainly in Scotland or the west coast of Scotland. And then in the big bad world of waste management, we're going to give you a magic wand to resolve some issue in the sector. What would you like to use it for?
I've got one that I'm going to then contradict myself. So it's really about the pace of change, that what we're doing is far too slow. So you're saying about food waste and the introduction in England. With, the local authorities are, we're saying there's a climate emergency, we need to be really moving forward. Actually, we're doing it far, far too slow. I think what then contradicts that is actually some of those changes need infrastructure changes and they take time. And so really the gap is from clarity to industry to then be building these new facilities to when things will actually be implemented. But I think we need to do as much as possible to speeding up any change to reduce our carbon impact.
Yeah.
I think that's the bit that's forgotten, isn't it? It's the infrastructure that supports this is Scotland, for example, has had food waste collection for ages. So there are vehicles going around every house picking up food waste, but they're only picking up from 20% of the houses. And there are facilities that are capable of taking more food waste if it was presented to them. So
if you look at our recycling facilities, they need to be available to be processing a new mix of material from April next year. We still don't have absolute certainty on when that new mix of material is. So we've seen recently that the paper and card is going to be separate. That won't be consistent everywhere. Some authorities will complete assessments that they'll have a mix that they might currently do, which they'll push forward to continue. As operators of the MRFs, we need to be buying equipment, we need to be placing orders, and it's similar to food waste collection service where people need to be buying bins and caddies and vehicles. There's just so much demand in a short period of time that there isn't going to be the infrastructure available on time, is the fear.
But it's a huge issue with the councils as well, because they're going to have to change the routing and potentially more bins and all sorts of, procuring vehicles and all sorts of stuff that, they're all going to be out procuring new vehicles and new bins, and there'll not be capacity to all get them, basically.
No, that's right. And then you wonder what will happen to the price. So is it going to cost the local authorities more then because of that shortage of supply? Or what we've seen in the past is some local authorities buying lower quality containers that actually then cause a lot of damage from their operation or from sunlight and things, because there hasn't been the opportunity to purchase the quality items they would have liked to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you see that, don't you? Because I'm looking at even with my bins at home, I've had my grey bin ever since I moved in, which is like 25, 26 years ago. And it's still, it's still going to last for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But the quality of the other bins, probably the recycling bins, are just
they're dreadful.
Yeah,
dreadful.
They're still there. They're still going. I'm still looking after them.
They're still,
but I can see they're not going to last the same amount of time as my my nice grey bin, and it's heavier. The grey bin, empty. I mean, so we've got a final question here, Gordon, which we'll ask everybody as well, is what advice would you give to the younger generation coming into the sector? How would you say, come on in, we need more younger people moving into the world of waste?
I think we should jump at the chance. It's such a vibrant sector with so much change, and really it's about embracing that change. If you look at when I was saying at the beginning of my career, landfill tax had just been introduced, and we're starting to move away from landfill, and now we've got energy from waste, but we also look at the complexity with carbon reporting and monitoring, perhaps new technology for carbon capture. So I think there's so much change that happens in the industry that people should come to the industry, embrace it, but continue to keep up to date, learn new skills and knowledge, and actually embrace that change, and they'll find it a really enjoyable sector to be part of.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
How important do you think, Gordon, was your, like, you obviously worked a bar where it was pretty full on with 100 vehicles a day coming in tipping waste. So you saw that relentless bit about waste management. How important do you think that's been to you in sort of informing your decision making later in your career? Just because I sometimes feel there's people in sort of policy places that don't actually understand that relentless nature of waste management. It doesn't stop. No. It stops on Christmas Day and it stops on New Year's Day, and then the next day you're hammered twice as hard because they picked up the previous days.
Yeah, the thing is, it's so critical. I genuinely feel it was such a great foundation, and then in my other operational roles, actually I've learnt so much from that, because you exactly see that. You stand on the landfill site and you see the volume of wood or cardboard and other materials at the time they're coming in, and you think, this is just wrong. How can this be the case? Why are the people doing that? Why is this a cheaper option compared to alternatives? And so I think that first-hand operational experience I found invaluable as an eye-opener. And now I still think back to that, or one of the things I really enjoy now is still visiting sites, seeing what's happening on the ground, because you do see the change in the waste composition, but you can still see the volume of food waste in there, that there really needs to be a legitimate solution to get that out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you. That's us exhausted our questions, Gordon. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
It was lovely to catch up, and I had forgotten the Welly story, but it's now firmly implanted back.
You're probably more concerned with alternative stories I had, Alistair.
I was wondering what other ones you could dream up.
We'll take those offline, Gordon. You can
we'll
tell
have a
me.
wee conversation in the next 5 minutes, will we?
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.